Hey everybody, welcome into Folklore and Flourish here with Jane over at Blue Box 29. Today is the final day of our season 3 of March. So today is March 31st. It is our final day of the Tested Hero. We are at the end of week 4 with our destiny sealed. Yesterday was our rest day. We've had a pretty long, big month. There's been a lot of crazy stuff happening even just within our personal lives. But today is all about the reflection. So our theme is meaning reclaimed. So we're going to take some time to listen to 4 stories that are all about the reflection. And we're going to listen to those through Greek, Egyptian, Native, and Japanese folklore today. So sit back and enjoy these 4 stories on the reflection. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Delphi and the Knowing Within. In the sacred landscape of Delphi, nestled along the slopes of Mount Parnassus in ancient Greece, there stood a place believed to be the center of the world, a point where the human and the divine could meet, and within this space resided the oracle of Delphi, a priestess known as a Pythia, through whom seekers came not to receive direct answers, but to encounter something far more complex. The reflection of their own uncertainty, shaped through symbolic and often cryptic messages that required interpretation, contemplation, and self-awareness. Those who traveled to Delphi were often leaders, warriors, and individuals standing at pivotal moments, seeking clarity about decisions that would shape their future. Yet what they received was rarely straightforward, for the oracle did not remove the burden of choice, but returned it in a different form, offering insight that demanded engagement rather than passive acceptance. And in this, Delphi revealed the profound truth that wisdom is not given fully formed, but uncovered through reflection. Inscribed at the entrance to the temple were the words, "Know thyself," a phrase that encapsulated the deeper purpose of the site, reminding all who entered that the answers they sought externally were inseparable from their own internal understanding, and that without self-awareness, even the clearest guidance could be misunderstood or misused. The process of consulting the oracle often involved ritual preparation, purification, and the acknowledgement that one was stepping into a space of heightened awareness, where ordinary thinking would not suffice. And once the message was delivered, the true work began, the integration of what had been heard into the reality of one's life, requiring discernment, patience, and honesty. The stories that emerge from Delphi often show that those who misinterpreted the oracle's words did not fail because the message was incorrect, but because they lacked the self-awareness to understand it fully. While those who approached with humility and reflection were able to align their action more clearly with what was being revealed. This dynamic illustrates that wisdom is not simply information, but integration, the ability to take insight and allow it to reshape perception, behavior, and understanding, transforming knowledge into lived experience. Delphi's enduring significance lies not in the specific prophecies it produced, but in the process it embodied. A reminder that clarity emerges not from certainty but from reflection, and that the journey toward understanding is ongoing, requiring continuous engagement with both the external world and the internal self. In the end, the Oracle of Delphi stands as a mirror rather than a voice of authority, reflecting back to each seeker the necessity of self-knowledge. showing that the answers we seek are often already present, waiting to be recognized, and that the final stage of any journey is not simply arrival, but understanding, the ability to look at what has been experienced and see it clearly, integrated into who we are and how we move forward, revealing that reflection is not a pause after the journey, but the moment where its meaning becomes fully known. Story 2: The Desert Fathers and the Silence That Teaches. In the vast stillness of the deserts of Egypt, where the landscape stretches wide and empty beneath an unrelenting sky, a group of early Christian ascetics known as the Desert Fathers withdrew from society, not to escape the world, but to encounter it more truthfully within themselves. Beginning in the 3rd century CE, figures such as Anthony the Great and others chose lives of solitude, simplicity, and silence, entering environments where distraction was stripped away and only the self remained, unshielded and unsoftened. In this space, there were no external structures to lean on, no constant activity to fill the mind, only the steady presence of one's own thoughts, fears, desires, and questions. And it was here, in this confrontation with the inner world, that transformation began, not through external instruction, but through awareness, through the act of sitting with what arises without turning away. The Desert Father spoke often in brief sayings, known as the apophthegmata, short reflections that carried deep meaning, emphasizing humility, patience, and the necessity of self-examination. And among their teachings was the understanding that silence is not emptiness, but a space where truth becomes audible, where the noise that obscures clarity begins to settle, allowing deeper insight to emerge. They believed that one could not truly understand the world without first understanding oneself, and that this understanding could not be rushed or forced, but had to be allowed to unfold over time, through stillness, through presence, through the willingness to remain with what is uncomfortable or unclear. Many who come to seek their guidance expected answers, but instead received questions, or simple observations that redirected attention inward, reinforcing that wisdom is not something given from one person to another, but something realized within, discovered through reflection and lived experience. The desert itself became a teacher, its silence reflecting the inner silence that was being cultivated, its vastness mirroring the depth of the human interior, and its harshness revealing both the limits and the resilience of those who entered it. This story shows that reflection is not always gentle, that it can involve confronting aspects of oneself that are difficult or unresolved, but that within this process lies a potential for clarity, for a kind of knowing that is not based on external validation, but on internal alignment. The Desert Fathers demonstrate that wisdom is not found in accumulation, but in reduction, in removing what is unnecessary until what remains can be seen clearly, and that this process requires time, patience, and a willingness to remain present, even when there is no immediate resolution. In the end, their lives stand as a reminder that reflection is not passive, but active, that it is a discipline that shapes how we see and understand, and that by entering into stillness with intention, we create the conditions for insight to arise naturally, revealing that the deepest truths are often found not in movement, but in quiet, where the self can finally be seen without distortion, and where understanding can take root and grow into wisdom. Story 3: The Vision Quest and the Journey Within. Among many Native American traditions of the plains, where land, spirit, and identity are deeply interconnected, the practice, often referred to as a vision quest, represents a profound threshold, not of movement outward, but of turning inward, a deliberate journey into solitude and stillness, undertaking to seek clarity, purpose, and alignment. And while the specific forms and names of this practice vary across different nations, the underlying principle remains consistent, that understanding one's place in the world requires stepping away from distraction and entering into direct relationship with both the self and the natural world. Those who undertook this journey would often prepare through guidance from elders, engaging in rituals of purification such as sweat lodges, then travel to a secluded place in nature, a mountain, a forest, or an open plain, where they would remain alone for a period of time, sometimes without food or water, not as an act of deprivation for its own sake, but as a means of clearing the body and mind, allowing perception to sharpen and awareness to deepen. In this state, removed from the rhythms of daily life, the individual becomes more receptive, not only to external signs, but to internal insight, and visions, dreams, or moments of realization may arise, though they are not forced or guaranteed. For the purpose of the quest is not to produce an experience, but to create the conditions in which understanding can emerge naturally. The natural world plays an essential role in this process, not as a backdrop, but as an active participant, with animals, weather, landscape, and silence, all contributing to the experience, offering symbols, patterns, and reflections that must be interpreted not intellectually alone, but intuitively, requiring the individual to engage with meaning on multiple levels. When the seeker returns from the quest, the experience is often shared with a trusted elder or community member, who helps interpret or integrate what was encountered, reinforcing that while the journey itself is solitary, its meaning is understood within relationship, with the broader cultural and spiritual context that grounds the experience and connects it to lived life. This practice reveals that reflection is not simply thinking about oneself, but entering into a state where deeper layers of perception become accessible, where identity is not defined by external roles, but discovered through direct experience and awareness, and that this process cannot be rushed, controlled, or predicted, but must be approached with openness and respect. The Vision Quest teaches that wisdom is not found in constant activity, but in intentional stillness, that by stepping away, one can return with greater clarity, carrying insight that is not theoretical, but lived, and that this insight shapes how one moves forward, how one understands their role, and how they engage with the world. In the end, this story stands as a reminder that the journey inward is as real and necessary as any outward path, that within silence and solitude there exists a depth of understanding that cannot be accessed otherwise, and that by entering into that space with intention, one can encounter not just answers, but a deeper sense of self, revealing that reflection is not an endpoint, but a passage into greater alignment with who one is and how one is meant to live. Story 4, The Sacred Mirror and the Truth Reflected. Within the spiritual traditions of Japan, particularly in Shinto belief, the concept of the sacred mirror, known as yata no kagami, holds a central and profound meaning, not as an object of decoration, but as a symbol of truth, clarity, and self-reflection. And it is one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan, representing wisdom and the ability to see without distortion. Its most well-known appearance comes from the myth of the sun goddess Amaterasu, who, after being disturbed and angered by the actions of her brother, Susanoo, retreated into a cave, plunging the world into darkness, removing light not only physically but symbolically. As clarity and order faded from the world, the other gods, recognizing that the balance of existence depended on her return, devised a plan not of force but of reflection, placing the mirror outside the cave and creating a scene of joy and curiosity, drawing Amaterasu's attention until she stepped forward, and upon seeing her own reflection in the mirror, she was captivated. Recognizing her own light, her own presence, and in that moment of self-recognition she emerged, restoring illumination to the world. This story is not simply about the return of light, but about the role of reflection in that return. For it was not persuasion or command that brought Amaterasu back, but the act of seeing herself clearly, of recognizing what she was and what she carried. And in this, the mirror becomes more than an object. It becomes a tool of awareness, a symbol that truth is not imposed from the outside, but revealed through clear perception. In Shinto practice, mirrors are often placed in shrines, not as representations of the divine, but as invitations to encounter it, to recognize that the sacred is not separate from the self, but present within, and that by looking clearly, without distortion or avoidance, one can come into alignment with that truth. The sacred mirror teaches that reflection is not about judgment, but about recognition, about seeing what is without adding or removing, and that this clarity allows for movement, for return, for the restoration of balance both internally and externally. This story reveals that the final stage of the journey is not action, but understanding, that after all trials, transitions, and rest, there comes a moment where one must look directly at what has been experienced and integrate it, allowing it to become part of who they are rather than something separate from them. The mirror does not change what it reflects, but it changes how it is seen, and in doing so, it creates a possibility for transformation, not through force, but through awareness. In the end, the sacred mirror stands as a reminder that wisdom is not something added, but something revealed, that clarity comes not from searching endlessly outward, but from looking inward with honesty and presence, and that when we are able to see ourselves fully, without distortion, we step into alignment with who we are meant to be, carrying forward not just experience, but understanding, showing that reflection is not the end of the journey, but the moment where everything becomes clear. All right, everybody, welcome back in to Folklore and Flourish. Today, again, is March 31st. This is our final day of March. Today is all about the reflection, and our theme is meaning reclaimed. Our lesson today is that wisdom is integrated. So with our 4 stories today, we started it off right away with the oracle at Delphi. And this wasn't so much about the oracle itself, but about receiving messages, receiving signs, and interpreting them. So there are a number of ways to interpret signs, and the only way to truly do it successfully is to take a pretty good look at ourselves and to know ourselves. And that's why within the temple or on the temple, it says, know thyself. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you're told, what you're shown, if you aren't going to have some self-awareness about it. That's been pretty big with me lately in my life, is having some self-awareness in terms of what are the signs I'm seeing and what am I going to do moving forward with myself and as an individual. So the important note for this one is that wisdom begins the moment you truly see yourself. So as I was saying earlier, or just a second ago, understanding where we go as an individual doesn't mean we're not still with our partners, with our person. I'm still with Mark. I'm just doing a lot of self-reflection of kind of what I should do. What am I doing? And hopefully today I'll get a little bit of hypnosis with this QHHT and get some help with that reflection today. Sometimes it takes a different route to get there. Sometimes you need a little bit more help. And I kind of stepped out of my own way and asked Mark for a little bit more help in that area. Anyways, though, story 2, the Desert Fathers and the Silence That Teaches. This one is all about the fact that it can't be forced either. Sometimes we have to stay in the uncomfortability, in the silence, and just remain there and remain present long enough to realize that in that stillness, there is understanding. There is other stuff happening within that stillness that's there to teach us. And if we listen to the quiet, we approach it with the humility and patience, in time it'll come. Sometimes it's a lot harder to wait for that to come. I'm definitely feeling that. As you can see, I'm not feeling my best today, but it's kind of just because I've been in the uncomfortability, the silence for a little bit. And now I'm stepping into trying to understand better, trying to learn myself better and hear what's being shown around me. And I'm stepping into this tonight, hopefully doing the QHHT with Mark, knowing with these stories, even just like story 3 says, is that sometimes we undergo some of this stuff and nothing happens. Hypnosis is something that I haven't done before. In the past, I didn't truly know if it would work or not. But Mark's assured me that you don't truly have to believe it will work. You have to believe that you yourself can heal and that it is within ourselves. But I liked how story 3 kind of emphasized as well. Sometimes we aren't just given the answers. Sometimes we go out and seek stuff and we leave with even more questions than we arrived with. We leave less clear. And that's, I guess, a little bit of what I'm afraid of. And I'm not at all putting those intentions into my hypnosis or anything, but it kind of just gave me peace of mind that there's nothing wrong with us if we go search for answers and we're leaving with questions, or if we don't have things spelled out for us and we're struggling. It just kind of gives me a little bit of hope that when it doesn't work, or I guess a story, stepping away from distractions, clearing our body and our mind of stuff, and putting ourselves in a place where we can be helped. Again, knowing that we have to rely on other people as well to do that. It isn't this whole journey, this whole life journey of me, myself, and I. And it's not this messy thing where we have to keep everything to ourselves. This story tells us right away and emphasizes again the importance of community, the importance of going to elders, and the importance of, no, it's not elders in the sense of everyone that's just older than you. These are wise men of their community. These are people who read the signs, who are deep within their culture. So in the context of today, we can It doesn't need to be a huge community, but it could definitely be our family, our friends, whoever it may be. But again, sometimes we go in hoping for a bunch of answers, hoping for a path put in front of us, and we're faced with more difficulty than we thought we would be. The important note is that with this story is that sometimes we do just have to step away, though, to see who we truly are. That doesn't mean that we fail, and that doesn't mean that we're giving up or that we're going to be gone forever, but sometimes we do have to step away to truly understand who we are as individuals and who we want to become. And story 4 is all about the sacred mirror, the truth that is reflected back at us. This is one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan. So it represents, again, our wisdom and our ability to see without distortion. I really liked the story that we've read before early on in our first season in January of Amaterasu, and how she couldn't be forced back out. She couldn't be, controlled or threatened to come back out. She just needed to see herself more clearly. She needed to see her light again. Because, as we sometimes go into this darkness, into whatever that may look like for anybody, we forget how important we are in the grand scheme of things. We forget that other people do rely on our light and our presence. And it's a scary burden, but I don't think it's really a burden at all. I think it just means that we matter to people, to our community, and the fact that we matter helps us carry on a little bit more. And the gods and the deities really helped Amaterasu come back when she was struggling, when she withdrew from the world. Sometimes we do just need help coming back. And I don't think that it's necessarily approached with attacks or, well, why'd you do this? Or attacking someone else who we want to blame. Sometimes it's simply just here's who you are. Remember who you are, and step back into the light. But with those 4 stories from March 31st, the daily thread is that today we enter the reflection, where the journey turns inward and meaning is reclaimed. Through Delphi, we are reminded to know ourselves before seeking answers. Through the Desert Fathers, we learn that silence reveals what noise hides. Through the Vision Quest, we step away to discover who we truly are. Through the Sacred Mirror, we see that truth is not given, it is recognized. Each story brings us back not to where we started, but to who we've become. What do you see now that you couldn't see before? You did not just walk the path, you became it. So with our reflection today, our tested hero, the month of trials and destiny of March, our tested hero is finally able to and the lesson of wisdom is integrated wisdom is integration, is just with everything that's been learned, it's almost impossible to go back to who we were. That's the way that life kind of works. And if we do try to go back, there's often ways that the universe shoves us back, into our new path or where we're meant to be. But at the end of this month, and with our destiny sealed, we ask, who am I now? So our reflection question is, who am I now? So today we're actually going to look at our reflection in the mirror and remain present with what we see. So just look in the mirror. Don't allow yourself to wander any judgment or anything like that. We're just staying present and aware of what we see. And then I'm going to leave you today with the fact that wisdom emerges when experience is fully integrated. And that is our March month, our month of the tested hero. Finishing it off with Destiny Sealed in our reflection today. Tomorrow, we begin our 4th season of April, and this is all about the archetype of the Veil Walker. But tonight, with the reflection, it's a pretty busy night for Mark and I. I'm hoping that when he comes home, we do the hypnosis, the QHHT, and I'll be stepping into the month of March, and then I'll be stepping into the month of April with a whole new feeling, understanding. And so I'm excited, and I hope to see you guys all tomorrow with the same excitement. See ya.